is your host, Morgan Pagel. We are recording today off-site here at Revel Advertising. But before we get into that, I want to introduce my guest, Chris Jarratt. Chris, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. We are recording right now in this conference room, and it is awesome. You want to talk about the flag in the back here real quick? I mean, if you're watching online, you got to watch on YouTube. But can you just describe what we're sitting in front of?
Yeah, so it's the Springfield flag. We overlaid the street, all of it from Springfield over it. We kind of put the downtown area right there in the middle. That's where we're located, just off College Street. And yeah, something to brighten up the conference room, be a little more unique than just your average conference room. So
no, it's awesome. It's awesome. If you hear anything in the background, I say this when I live in my loft all the time. I'm like, look, it's authentic. We don't have a studio yet. If you want to help us get a studio, donate. So until then, no complaints about the background noise, period. That's that. So I reached out to Chris because I saw a bunch of stuff you and your company were doing on LinkedIn, and it just seemed so cool and interesting. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how Revel was started and all the things?
Yeah, so we started Revel in 2010. So I'm a co-founder, Nicole Jarratt. I'm her husband. She's also a co-founder, and she's our CEO, and my official title is Chief Creative Officer. But I do a lot of different things from the creative side, obviously, but also as it comes to business development and growth of the company, I'm focused in that area as well. So yeah, we've been in business 10 years. We're a creative services agency, but we are full service. So while we do have a main focus on creative services, we also are full service in the sense that we can handle your whole marketing needs, whether that's media placement or we're designing logos on the front end, whatever it is, we can handle it in-house.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we get into anything else, one quick marketing question. So if a company was like, hey, we don't even want to touch our social media, do you guys run whole accounts for companies or just kind of like create content for them? Ideally,
we're helping them set up a way to do it internally. Honestly, unless they're a huge company, it's hard to make sense to outsource that.
Right.
So if you're a small to mid-sized business, it's a lot better to maybe engage an agency to help you set up maybe your content calendar or content creation, but to actual manage it and posting, you can probably hire in and do that a lot more affordably than having an agency run that for you.
Yeah, that's great. I always have so many like small businesses in the manufacturing world who are always like, I don't know what I'm doing, and just get with a digital marketing agency or advertising, and they can help you, get the structure.
Yeah.
So are you from Springfield originally?
No, I moved here in '97 to go to Drury University. But yeah, so I was actually born in DC.
Okay.
Then moved to Seattle. Then moved to Des Moines, then moved to Rolla, Missouri.
Wow, that's a culture shock, reverse.
And then to Key West, Florida, and I did all that by 4th grade. So moved around a lot.
So what did your parents do again?
So people always like, oh, military? I'm like, no, and they're always like, well, what did your parents do? And I just say they like to marry other people, and that got us moving around quite a bit. So yeah, between my parents, they were married 8 times total.
To each other?
No, no, definitely not. But a total of 8 marriages between the two.
Wow.
Right. So a lot of step siblings and half siblings. I'm a only child, except for my half brother, who is 17 years younger than me. So big age gap there. But so, yeah, I did most of my growing up in Key West, Florida, though. So just a small island just off Cuba. And it's a unique experience. It was super fun. Pros and cons come along with living kind of isolated from a lot of things. But yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. But so eventually I ended up, though, in St. Louis for high school, living with my father at that time. And lived there for 3 years, and ended up then in Marshfield, Missouri for my senior year of high school. So I went from a city school. I feel like
there's so much Marshfield lately. Did you like it? I was just there for like a little conference thing, and I'm always like, no disrespect, Marshfield, though. No disrespect.
Well, so I went to a city school in St. Louis, and it was very big, right in the middle of the city. And I was, I think it was like 20% white kids. So I was like very much the minority there, and then went to Marshfield. If you've been there, we're all white kids there. Right. And so it was a very big culture shock. completely different than really anywhere that I'd ever lived. But I was familiar with the community because my grandmother had lived there all her life, and she had run a men and boys store there. And so every summer I'd come visit her and stay there for a little bit, work in her store, just visit and spend time with her. So I was familiar with the place, and I knew a few kids from like playing baseball in the summer and stuff. So it wasn't like completely senior year new place, and but it was still a little bit of a shock to do. But worked out great. So I lived with my grandma my senior year. She took me in. Step families don't always work out, and I was pretty hard-headed as a kid, and I wasn't really the easiest stepson probably to have either. So things just didn't tend to always work out for me in those different situations. But luckily, I had the coolest grandma in the world. Like, I owe her everything. That's awesome. The reason I want to be an entrepreneur. She inspired me to do so much.
Give a cheer. Oh, that's the wrong one. No, there we go. There we go for grandma.
What Grandma Mildred? Yeah, so she's awesome. She ran her and my grandpa started a men's clothing store business, and it was in business for over 40 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
But he passed away when I was like 5 or 6.
I'm sorry.
But she ran that by herself, never remarried, just kept going for that'd have been like 20 years or so.
Independent woman, queen,
right,
yeah.
Right. So I was always inspired by that. She's actually the first person that gave me a chance to run my own business. So I think I was like 13 or 14. I was staying there one summer, and I was really into baseball cards, as kids in the early 90s, late 80s were. And so I saw an opportunity that there were tons of moms bringing their kids in to try on jeans. They hated it. They were bored. They didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
So I talked my grandma into leasing me some space. I think I had to sweep the store to get the space in this little booth, and I set up a baseball card shop. And so I had a captive audience of a bunch of kids who didn't have anything else to do but wait for their moms to check out. And then moms were just dying to bribe them to try on stuff. So they're like, okay, I'll buy you a pack of baseball cards if you try on these jeans. And so, yeah.
Problem, solution, target audience, market, boom.
Right. So that was my first business at 13 years old, doing that for one summer. And I think from that moment on, I knew I always wanted to own my own business someday. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That was kind of my journey to Marshfield. And then I came here from Marshfield to go to Drury University. And that was because I wanted to be an architect. I don't know that I really wanted to be an architect. I wanted to design. Like, I've always loved creating things and making things. It's always just something that comes naturally to me. But I was really good at math. And they were like, well, you're good at drawing and good at math. You should be an architect. I was like, oh, cool. Well, then that sounds good.
Yeah.
And I got close to a full ride to go to Drury. So I was like, okay,
that's pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
I can afford it. I'll go there. And if you know anything about Drury's architecture program, it is intense. And I was working while I was going to college, to support myself.
Right, yeah.
Even though I didn't have to pay tuition, I still had, still got bills.
Food, yeah.
So it was challenging, and I just really dug in. And the first 2 years, you have to qualify for their upper level program at Drury. Made it through that. Got qualified for the upper level program, and finally just was able to take a breath and think, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? And I decided, no, I like design. And one of my friends who was in the program didn't make it, and he had to switch his major, and he was telling me he was switching to design. And I was like, oh, like graphic design, like the stuff we do to present all the buildings we do? And I was like, yeah. I was like, oh. So that logo I made for that building, that I had more fun making the logo for than I did creating the actual building. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, well, I guess that is the job. And so looked into that more, and talked to the professor there who's the head of the department, Dudley Murphy, who was just an awesome guy. He recently actually passed away a couple of years ago, but he was really instrumental in making me see how the transition could make sense. And so it was really great. Drury made it easy. The architecture program was a 5-year program anyway, so I was still on the same path to graduate when I expected to. And made that switch, and I guess the rest is history. Graduated from college, and then, I mean, so I had a job before I started Revel, obviously, too. So my first job out of college almost didn't happen, actually. A buddy of mine we went to Atlanta. We were going to go to the portfolio center down there. And we thought about it. It was really expensive. And that summer, Gary and Joan Whitaker, who owned Whitaker Marketing, now their daughter Logan owns it, who owned 417 Magazine. They own 417 Magazine, all the 417 branded companies, offered me a job. And so I thought, okay, well, do I want to go work here or and really get to do a lot, right? They had just bought it. I knew I was going to get to do all kinds of stuff. Do I want to do that, or do I want to go pay for grad school or stay here and get paid to learn a bunch of stuff? So
was it that question though, where it's like, do I stay in Springfield or do I, what was that tension between the decision? Yeah,
like Atlanta obviously sounded a lot more exciting.
Yeah.
Especially just because Springfield at that time, so 97, was still kind of like, in my mind, old Springfield. Like, a lot of what the city was doing, Vision 2020, hadn't happened yet. Like, we didn't have the Cardinals yet. We didn't have the ice cream. Like, a lot of the things that, like, maybe people your age come here kind of take for granted, feel like it's always been here, because it has been here for like 20 years. But at that time, we didn't have any of that. So it was about to happen, though. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do this for a little bit, and then I'll go somewhere else, right? This will just be my starting spot. But I did that for 2 years, worked there, and it was great because Gary and Joan, they didn't know it, but they kind of were like mentors, accidental mentors maybe. I mean, they were great bosses too, but like what I didn't realize until later on in life that I was kind of picking up from that was how I guess the advantages of a husband and wife working in a business together, right? And that was never something that I saw, right? Because I saw my grandma like do her thing, right? It was just her doing that. I had a stepfather that was an entrepreneur. It was just him doing his thing. But seeing how they could really complement one another and kind of pick their lanes and really own it and maximize their strengths. Yeah. Because, you're not good at everything, right? And so I've learned along the ways to don't try to be better at the things you suck at. Go find people that are good at that and just be okay with being crappy at a few things and find other ways to
driving for me. I'm just
we might not be at least okay with that, but but I really saw a lot of advantages there that I didn't realize until later on when I started Revel. But it was a really cool opportunity for me because they had just bought the magazine, but they had also owned a marketing company too. So I got 2 jobs for the price of one. And they just let me, anything they had come up, any initiative, I was like, yeah, I can do that. I didn't know how to do any of it, but I just said yes. I said yes to everything. I was working a lot of hours, but I would have been doing just as much at grad school, and this was real life experience. So I got to work with large banks and lots of consumer good companies too, plus on the publishing side. So I was learning a lot about that, and I was picking up on how they were growing their small business in Springfield too. So I was learning so much at that time. Like, that experience was probably critical to me feeling ready to start my own business only 2 years out of college. So in 2004,
that is crazy impressive. 2 years out of college.
Well, I mean, that's one of the cool things about Springfield though. So fast forward 2 years, I've been working there. I decide it's time to go out on my own. And I decide that one of the great things about Springfield is you can make connections here so fast, right? Like, it's big enough to have some advantages of a larger city, but it's still small enough to where the community is connected. And being able to kind of plug in and grow a small business here and be an entrepreneur here for a very low entry point was very realistic. And so I was able to do that. And so my first business here was Jarratt Design, and it was just design services. There wasn't full service marketing.
It was just you, or was your wife on board?
No. So it was just me. My wife and I weren't married yet. So I started, and I did that for 6 years. So got a lot of experience there, got married somewhere in between there. I can tell you that story later. It's fun. So
is this like a solo entrepreneur at that point, small business owner? How many clients were you taking on by yourself at that time?
Started out pretty slow. Had a couple stuff that led to the jumping off point that was kind of publishing related. So I really knew that world really well. And it was really hard because I didn't realize how much work has to go into developing the business. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I'll tell people and I'll start a business and people will
Right.
come because they'll need it, right?
Like the accounting and all the back end stuff. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, that part's hard too because I'm not good at that.
Neither am I.
But really just getting the business, like going,
Yeah.
you got to put yourself out there. And I wasn't really like super extroverted. I didn't really want to go speak in front of people and all that. So I really struggled there for a little bit at first, but I had real low overhead. So I only had to make a certain amount to be okay. You know, I'm like 26 with no kids, no
Yeah.
wife. And, you know, what do you need when you're 26? You can get by pretty easy.
Right, ramen.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, lots of ramen.
So before we get anywhere else, I just had a quick question. I know when you mentioned that you moved around a lot when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was challenging. So I know, like, for me, moving from, you know, Green Bay to Missouri, not knowing anyone and just kind of switching high schools when I was younger, it helped me become like hyper independent and almost feel like when you meet someone, when you meet a connection, it's like, hi, my name is Morgan, my favorite color is red, this and this, you know. And so when you moved around so much, I think it's interesting that you said you weren't extroverted. So was that difficult for you, or do you think it helped you kind of where you're at today?
I think I have like a naturally curious and collaborative like vibe to me. So like it was still, I didn't really have to put myself out there to make friends, but also I was always in sports. So like sports
Okay.
are like a natural avenue to like, you got buddies like instantly, right? You hit one home run and you're everyone's favorite person,
Especially like
right?
guys. Girls
Right.
are like, you know, they're kind of more petty, I feel like. But guys are always like, okay, cool, yeah, like.
Yeah. So, you know, or you get in a fight with someone and next thing you know, you're best friends or whatever, right? Like,
right.
So I don't know. I never really had that problem with moving around a lot, I guess. Yeah. I was kind of lucky that way.
Well, that's nice, yeah.
But I guess maybe that gave me a false sense of like, well, the getting business will be just that easy too.
Gotcha.
It's a new thing. And you really have to work at getting your name out there and getting people to want to work with you, right?
Yeah.
And so I did end up joining a B&I group. I don't know if you're familiar with those. They're just like a networking group. They're all over the country. But it was really great because it forces you to kind of stand up and present in front of people and get you more comfortable in those environments, which was kind of a great leveling up opportunity from me just taking anything and everything that someone would give me to be more intentional about trying to seek referrals and seek out the business that I wanted to work with. So yeah, it led to one of the biggest clients that we ever got. I was still in there as we transitioned to Revel. I stayed in there a couple more years even. But it's great opportunity for like solo entrepreneurs who are younger, who maybe don't have the experience or the networking opportunities. It's a great way to kind of get yourself out there. So,
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, like as Gen Z, we have so much stuff on social media. You know, you're freelancing, you just type a little thing in Google. So, you know, I don't think there was social media at that time.
No,
so,
Facebook was just being invented.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're a solo small business, what are you doing to get the leads? Like, are you door knocking, you know, phone numbers? How are you getting, like, how did you do it?
Yeah. Well, started networking really was the key, and just meeting more people and asking for referrals, making sure to get my name out there, working for nonprofits, doing anything to just kind of get my name out there, let people know I was in business. Was really helpful. And honestly, you know, there's obviously I'm in marketing, so there's a lot of ways to get your name out there nowadays. But I still really value those relationships. That's really what we've been built on, and it's something I'm passionate about. So I still try to get out there as much as possible. I'm involved in a lot of organizations that are community-based, just to make sure people know that we're a resource and we're out there and we care about the community. And if they care about the community, we might be a good partner for them. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, okay, so the birth of Revel. Where did that come from?
Okay, so 2010 is when we decided to pull the trigger. My wife was handling marketing and basically general managing a local company here, and she didn't really see any growth opportunities where she was at. And I kind of plateaued as a solo designer. I tried bringing on like some people to help out with projects, but it wasn't quite right. I was still working out of basically my office at home, right? I was home based. And it just felt like I needed to do something bigger. Again, what's that next level up thing to do? And we didn't have any kids at the time, and we had a little bit of money saved up, and I was doing pretty good and had, you know, a decent roster of clients on the design side. I thought, well, you're great at the marketing side. You also understand how to run a business better than me because I'm 3 months behind on sending invoices out right now. You know, like that's not.
It'd be like that sometimes.
This brain ain't built for that.
Yeah.
But so I was like, why don't we just combine our efforts and try this out? And so we partnered with a third person that I had known from jewelry that was friends of a friend and had more agency experience. They just had that dissolved within the first year, though. We just had different ideas of like where we wanted to take the agency and stuff. And so luckily we were able to exit as friends, and that worked out good, bought them out, and then we kept moving on. But again, kind of going back to Joan and Gary, like seeing them run their business as a husband and wife duo really made me see the advantages of doing that and making it kind of realistic. Because a lot of times people ask, like, what's it like to work with your wife all day? Yeah. How do you guys do it? And like, I don't know, I wouldn't really have it any other way.
Yeah.
From having another partner, not that I didn't trust her, but like having like that natural trust in your spouse is just like, you can't trust anyone. You shouldn't be able to trust anyone more. Right. And so I know she's running the numbers. She's taking care of the book. She's handling HR. She's, placing the media, like all the numbers stuff. I don't have to try. It takes me, 10 times the amount of effort to do what she can do, super easy. And so cool. I can take all that off my plate. Yeah. Now I can focus on the creative, which I love, and focus on growing the business, which I'm passionate about. Right. Yeah. So it allowed us to have our lanes, stay out of each other's way, agree to kind of say, I'm final say in this area, you're final say in that area. And then we just continue to grow. There was ups and downs with that. We started out Obelisk Home on Boonville.
Yeah, we love Obelisk.
Yeah,
we do. Yeah.
So Nathan's great. He actually rented us our first space. We were over there. If you go into our office,
everyone really is all connected.
Yeah,
well, it really is scary.
Yeah. So we were touring, trying to find a place, and we hadn't even named Revel yet. And we have a holding company called Purple Ram, just because, I don't know, I made it up. We needed something to put on the paperwork to send into.
Was that like a hybrid of like Purple Rain and then just watching the Rams play or something?
I don't know. I don't know.
There you go.
But so when we talked to them about leasing, we went ahead and leased it before we even named the company because we love the spot. We leased it, and they're like, Purple Ram. I was like, well, we're going to come up with something different. Next thing I know, they give us this big Purple Ram head that now sits in our office still that we still have.
That's awesome.
So it's cool. It's a fun story. They were great. Gave us a great deal to be able to let us kind of jump off in that spot. Grew out of it, moved into another building that they had on the other side of Obelisk Home, and we were there until right before the pandemic. And then they sold that building. So we were about to be office homeless, and we had to move. But luckily, Brad Irwin with Paragon Architecture is a client of ours and a good friend. I happened to run into him at a networking event. I think the Think Summit, maybe Biz 4 and 7's Think Summit.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah. Well, I was coming out and I was like, man, you're not going to believe this, but we got to find a space. You're an architect. Do you know of any places that have, an extra 2,500 or so square feet? He's like, yeah, the one I'm building right now. So the space we're in was like literally getting infilled right when I needed it. He hustled things along, infilled it perfect for us, and we were able to get in here just in time before we were office homeless.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's great to, have those connections. That all that stuff pays off in the long run when you're out and about and making connections with people. So so we were able to stay downtown, which was a huge priority for us. And, it's not always the case that you can do that, but we were able to keep our business downtown. We love that culture and vibe and what it does to kind of attract talent, keep talent. It's just kind of a part of our DNA at this point. So I was really pumped to be able to do that. The part that sucked, though, we were here for like 2 months and then the pandemic hit. And so we barely got moved in, and it was like, all right, go home.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, but we're here now, you know, fully in.
And it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous facility. I haven't seen all of it, but it's really great.
Yeah. Paragon does an awesome job. So they're a great company, and they really hooked us up. It was awesome.
That's awesome. I thought it was fascinating when you said that your mentors kind of suggested the idea of like man and wife working together in business. Because our last episode with Pavel, he has kind of the same thing going on. And I asked him about it, and he had said, when you're starting a small business, hours are in the business. And so, when you're doing it with your partner, you're spending all those hours with them. And when you're not, then you don't really get that time as much, and you don't really know what's going on in each other's world. And so I think it is fascinating because sometimes we just don't see that in culture because it's like, some companies like you cannot be dating each other like this and this. For others, that's kind of how the whole thing was formulated,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, there's obviously pros and cons, right? It's sometimes hard to shut it off. So you're,
right.
You're always kind of talking about the business. And so you have to be really intentional about, kind of unplugging,
right?
Which can be hard to do. It's hard to take vacation because the two people are gone. And at a 10-person agency, those 20% of us are gone and we're the main decision makers. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So we really have to, provide our employees with a lot of autonomy and empower them to make a lot of decisions, or we'd never be able to get away or get out of here for a few days to unplug. But so there's challenges that come along with it, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons in my mind. Yeah.
That's great. So tell us how you two met.
My wife was, I think, still in her senior year of college. And so I would have been like 28. Yeah. So I'm 6 years older than her.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was robbing the cradle a little bit. And we were at...
at least it wasn't like illegal, you know what I'm saying? I could have been the wrong cradle.
Right. Yeah. She was we were at a mutual friend's birthday party. And I was in like common form for 28-year-old Chris. I was having a good time. She was not impressed with me one bit. Like she was like, I was giving it my best shot, but she was not having it. And she was leaving, and I can be pretty determined when I want to be. I'm pretty laid back most of the time, but I was like, nope, this isn't happening. So she wasn't driving. She was sitting in the passenger seat. The person's pulling back out of the driveway kind of backwards. I run, beer in hand, solo cup. Yeah. Jump through thank God the window was open. Who knows? I probably didn't check real well. Jump through the window. Yeah. Land in her lap. Did not spill the beer, which is very impressive if you ask me. Yeah. And made an impression enough to, that she remembered me, got her number, and the rest is history.
It's giving The Notebook, like when he jumps on the Ferris wheel. Like, he's like, let me take you on a date.
Yeah. So
there we go. Just go for it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of how I try to live my life too. Like I would rather, regret trying something and failing than not trying at all. Yeah. So that one was worth it for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then how long were you guys together when you got married and then started Revel, basically?
Yeah, so we got married in 2006. So, man, we've been married 16 years. And started Revel in 2010. So we were married for, close to 4 years. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
No kids yet. We have one kid. So that made it a lot easier, though. That got extra stressful because our first year in business. Yeah.
I was going to say, at what point during the business did you guys say like, hey, let's have a kid? Or was it planned?
No,
like, what is that?
It was a happy accident. And I'm so thankful because like my wife's a big planner and I was so focused on it. Like I'd probably be this old still, like, I don't know if I don't think we'd have ever been like, now's the time. I don't know that anyone, maybe people that I don't know were like, now's the time. But I feel like everyone's kind of like, well, that's just when it happened.
I feel like they're either like, I want a baby, or it's like, if God wants it, it'll just happen, Yeah. No in between.
Yeah. So, really lucky that we had our son Jackson. He's amazing. He's like my favorite, like, being a dad's like my favorite thing. Like I always hope to be a dad and be a good dad, but like it like totally fills my bucket up. Like I love being a dad. It's awesome. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. No, that's so cool. Shout out to all the dads out there. Keep on being a dad. Like keep on being there. That's great. That's great. So to transition a little bit back to Revel. So in the beginning stages and as you grew, what did that internal growth and clientele look like? Yeah.
So luckily we were somewhat transitioning from Jarratt Design to Revel, so I had a little bit of a base of clientele, and still doing some networking and things like that. And pretty soon off the bat, I was doing some networking and met the marketing director at Missouri State Athletics through, I guess technically then it was Nelligan Sports, which is now Learfield Sports. There's a weird way that's all set up. And they were looking for some design help, and so we were able to land Missouri State Athletics. Boom. Just after, like, just kind of in year one, And it wasn't like a huge account revenue wise, but it was a really good account that shows, hey, we know what we're doing, give us a lot of publicity and exposure. And it was something that I enjoyed doing and our team enjoyed doing. And so it helped us grow from a talent standpoint and push us creatively. So that was one that kind of put us on the map. And then we started working with another local bank, Metropolitan National Bank was the name of it. It's since been acquired, and that bank was acquired. But it was a big one, and that was just through a networking referral that someone gave and said, hey, you should really talk to this person. Yeah. And slowly but surely, they signed on with us, and they were our biggest client for a number of years until they got acquired, which that's not the most fun experience. I never realized you can do too good, that another company will buy the company you've helped grow, and now they already have an internal marketing department and no longer need you. So
it's like a breakup.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big challenge for anyone out there who has what we call a guerrilla client. They were over 50% of our revenue, and it was just kind of gone within a month. It was really quick. I wasn't, I should have picked up on the signs that they were trying to get acquired, but it snuck up on me. And luckily we weathered that storm. We didn't have to let anyone go. I was able to drum up enough business to kind of get us through until we got a couple other bigger clients to get through. But yeah, that was a scary time. We had just moved into a bigger office and got hit with that. So, there's a lot of ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. It's not all sunshine and rainbows for sure. But, the challenges are exciting. You get through it. You learn a lot from it. So kept growing from there, just adding clients here and there. You lose some every now and again, but we ended up working with Missouri State Athletics for over 10 years. So, a lot of our clients stick around for a decade or so. That's pretty good in the agency world, in my opinion. And so now we work with all kinds of clients, whether it's small nonprofits or we work with, nationwide companies too.
So you mentioned in the beginning stages that networking was a big way that you got a lot of clientele. Is that still true today, or is it a lot more so just on the digital advertising side and things like that?
Yeah, it's more of a mix now, but there's still a lot of value I get in trying to do speaking opportunities, talking in front of large groups, being
on podcasts.
Being on podcasts. I've always attributed a portion of my success to just saying yes to stuff. Now that I'm getting older, I'm trying to say no more, but if it sounds like it's fun or it's going to help a young entrepreneur do something, I'm passionate about that, and you never know, right?
You never know.
A billionaire might be listening to this and decide that he wants a new logo that looks cool like this mural, right?
Yeah.
So you never know where the opportunities are going to come from. What do they say? Luck is really just where preparation and opportunity meet, right?
Boom. Don't have a quote, guy. I'm just kidding.
There we go. That's my quote.
Was that one? That's funny.
Right. And so people always say, oh, Chris, you're so lucky. And I'm just like, yep. And
when really it's so much hard work that has probably gone on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So,
That's awesome. So what would you say is the most fun part and also the most challenging part of starting your own business and, Revel Advertising and everything that you've accomplished in that realm?
Probably managing my time. Like I said,
Is it challenging or the fun one?
It's a little bit of both, but it's challenging for me because I say yes a lot. I have a hard time saying no. So many people gave me opportunities in my life when I asked, so I have a hard time saying no. I'm probably on too many boards, but I am passionate about Springfield. It's where my home is now, and I really want to see this place grow and succeed and continue to grow. I spoke earlier a little bit about what the city was doing when I was younger and wasn't sure Springfield was going to be my home by getting the Cardinals. And, the city just did something really big in buying that stadium to ensure that we get to keep the Springfield Cardinals here, which is huge for attracting talent and tourism dollars to our area. And so being a part of those kind of initiatives, whether it's, I've served on the Chamber's Board of Directors or whether it's serving on nonprofit boards or waiting for motorcycles to go by here.
I'm just kidding.
But, I currently serve on the Community Blood Center of the Ozarks Board, and they do great things in our community. And you learn so much, too, about your community by joining those boards. But, that's a time commitment.
Yeah.
And you have to honor that commitment that you made to those organizations, sometimes for 3, 6+ years.
Wow.
So it's a big thing to do, and then you still got to make time for work and your family and all that. So, yeah, just finding time is
the hard part.
Yeah, is a struggle, and so this was supposed to be the year of saying no. I'm not doing the best at that, if I'm being honest, but I've said no to a couple things.
It's probably like a journey. Like growth doesn't just it takes some time. You know, 2025, you'll be like the no guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and so the other part of the question, like, what do I love? Is that
yeah.
I mean, so I love being an entrepreneur. I'm not really good at being told what to do. It's never been something I've been great at. It was a problem in my youth probably, but I found my path by just doing my own thing. And so I really enjoy that, like betting on myself. The pressure can get to you some, but I find a way. I don't know. I almost thrive in it. Like if I'm getting depressed or something, like it like helps me ramp it up to know like I've got to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like you really kind of build yourself up, and no one else is going to do it for you, so you can't lay around and hope that it happens. Like you have to get over that and go put yourself out there and try and see what happens.
Yeah. I always say too that like I thrive in chaos. So so like when I'm having an vacation, I always book like 2 doctor's appointments and stuff like the same day. I can't just like do everything on time perfectly. It's always got to be stressful. And then I don't know. That's nobody asked, but that's figured out that in there. But
well, I mean, so I got tested for ADHD because I'm like all over the place. They said I don't have it. So I was like, okay, cool, but I don't know. I think they give me a bad test or something.
Yeah.
But I kind of look at that like my superpower. Honestly, like
I feel the same way because I have it for sure. I'm also not have been tested, but but it's like for me it's like I can get my stuff done, but I can't focus on conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so I'm always jumping between things. Like I can't stay on something for too long, but that allows me to kind of like cross-pollinate ideas a lot. So I'm thinking about one thing, thinking of idea for another, and that idea for the other thing was actually really great for this other thing, but I never would have thought about it unless I was working on something else totally unrelated. And those ideas just always come to me, and they always count on me as being the idea guy, and I really love that. It's a lot of pressure. Like, just go be creative, Chris. Oh, okay.
Right.
But it's
what's a good Instagram caption, Chris?
Yeah, but it's I don't know. I kind of look at it like an advantage. I'm dyslexic, so that's always been an issue for me, like slow reader and all that stuff. But also, like, I'm always like visually transposing things, and I think that's been an advantage when I'm designing logos or when I'm actually still doing the work, which I don't do as much anymore. But I always try to look at it as like an advantage too, and how can I use my limitations or my differences as an advantage instead of being so down about it. Yeah.
That's good. That's great. So to transition a little bit, kind of more on the mental health side.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you're on, sounds like a lot of boards, husband, father, business owner, and then when you're busy, obviously you probably want to cope with certain things, I mean, some people I had to start going to the gym because Missouri is so great that I just sit in the sauna and I play ocean noises so I can start, I'm like, you're in Florida, because it's getting to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you do it? How do you deal with having so many different hats and roles and stress and that kind of thing?
Well, belonging to a 24-hour gym helps. So I left the gym at about midnight last night because my kid didn't get to bed till 10, and I wanted to spend as much time with him as I could.
Yeah.
He's reading in bed, and finally he's asleep. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go hit the gym now. So you get home at midnight, answer some. I think I answered your email probably around midnight.
Yeah.
You were probably like, why is this guy still up?
Well, I felt bad because I was like, I'm so bad checking my email, and so I probably did not judge at all, or I probably didn't even see it till this point.
So, again, finding that time is challenging, but the gym is big for me for mental health. And I guess I knew it, but I didn't consciously know it until I started going to therapy and talking to my therapist. And she could tell oh, you haven't been to the gym this week, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't. And so
that's interesting.
It's like having those things for your mental health are very important. Like obviously having someone to talk to is very important that you can trust, and maybe someone that's you're not related to, or that can be like a therapist can be really helpful. to have. Yeah, you mentioned some of the boards I'm on. I'm on the Borrow My Angel board. A good friend of mine, Chuck Dow, started that to help with mental health awareness and suicide prevention. And so I lost my uncle to suicide. Actually, it was pretty tough. I lost my dad, my uncle, and my grandma, who raised me all within like 3 years. Like they're just boom, 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 like that. And I was too tough for therapy back then. I probably could have really used it at that time. You know, I just started recently going to therapy. Well, not recently, probably 4 or 5 years ago. You know, finally took my wife telling me, "You're annoying," and that, you know, in a nicer way, but like,
go women.
Stop. Yeah, you know, I want to be around you, right?
Yeah,
like, go, you know, you're nice all day, and then you come home and unload on me. Don't.
But that's coming, like, that's someone who loves you. And you can tell, like, you know, good best friends, good friends. They're not always just going to tell you what's up. They're going to say, look, I love you because of that. You need to stop this because this is nuts. Or, you know, don't wear that shirt. It looks so bad on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, the real honesty, that's a real mark of a good friend. Or, you know,
And, you know, that when I lived with my father, growing up with him, he was very like tough. Like, you don't, you know, that's not what you do. And my mom suffered from a lot of mental health illnesses and other illnesses. And so she was never healthy. And so like, it always looked like, and she would always, you know, be checked into facilities and stuff. And like, it just always looked, it was just weak to me. Like, that's how it was like. So if I just don't show that, then it's not there, and that's not how it works. Like, we all have trauma that we need to process and things that are issues that we need to deal with, and there's healthy ways to deal with those, and there's unhealthy ways to deal with them. And in my youth, I chose a lot of unhealthy ways to deal with that, and luckily I didn't do anything too stupid, but you know, I mean, it's kind of silly that it took me to like my late 30s, early 40s to like be okay with a guy going to a therapist. This sounds stupid to say out loud now, but like, it's okay to not be okay.
No, 100%. And it's so not stupid because, you know, me, I'm 23. And so like, if I'm going on dates with guys in my 20s and all these things, I'm seeing these areas of guys, and the ways they cope is gym and drinking, you know, or like playing video games. And it's like, come on, you know, if it's okay that like you're going through something, you know, like, it's so much more mature and adult type to be like, hey, I have an issue, let's deal with it. Like, if you have an issue, you go to the doctor if you don't feel well, you know, go to the dentist if you have a cavity. So go to the therapist if you have something you need to talk about that your friends want to understand or something like that. Yeah.
And so, I mean, so one thing I didn't mention, and it was something that was really, I guess, stressful from a family environment, is my wife and I, we adopted, not officially, but my half brother came to live with us when he was 10. Like the first year we got married.
Wow.
So we did have a kid who raised him from 10 till when he went off to college, and he's he's like 27 now. He's off doing his own thing. He's great. But you know, that was a lot of stress in our kind of family dynamic that existed there. Because, you know, I grew up for part of my life with my mom, and I knew the things I went through when I was living with her, and I could see them happening with my brother, and he had, like, you know, failed a grade and was on a path to fail again, and I was like, I can't let this happen. So, you know, luckily we were able to get him to move in with us and do all that. But like, sometimes you just like, you get so busy and put all these other things as priorities that you forget your own stuff, is why I'm saying that. Like, it's real easy to just try to, I guess, busy your way through depression, or busy your way through whatever you're dealing with. And that's really not a healthy way to deal with it, just by staying too busy.
And I know you and I had talked about it before, that sometimes, you know, guys or girls too, we can do it too. You know, you let things just bubble up so much to the point where all of a sudden you're like, okay, oh my gosh, I need to quit this job or get a divorce, or, you know, I don't want to live anymore. Like, you know, you let things bubble up so much that all of a sudden your answer is an extreme. Yeah. And so if we tackled those things, you know, when the issues came up and discussed it, we could probably have a handle on some of that stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of, obviously, local resources. Burl, Beyond Healing is a client of ours that is here local, that's really great at EMDR therapy. I know one of your past podcasts talked about that a little bit. So I did that. That was really instrumental in helping deal with like some past trauma stuff that I'm really good at burying it deep down. You know, I've kind of done that my whole life because just my childhood was kind of a mess. So
And that was just my coping mechanism, right, to survive. So that was just how I operated for a long time. But using that therapy really helped me kind of process some old stuff and really be more open to processing things sooner instead of just trying to, sweep it under the rug and I'll deal with that when I'm dead mentality.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're a great resource. They're actually one of the world leaders in EMDR training.
Beyond Healing?
Yeah, they
That's
train
awesome.
people all over the country on that therapy. So
Located downtown.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they're awesome. So, and there's tons of resources here. Like there's really, in this day and age, it's kind of, you can't say you can't find help. Like there's ways you should be able to connect. And if you can't, call me. I'll help you find somewhere to connect.
And even having a great mentor too, because you can start off sometimes in therapy or whatever, and then sometimes just having a mentor turned friend that you can. It's like a friend sponsor. It's like, hey, you're not in my life all the time, but I'm going through this. Can we get coffee? Can we talk? Can we check in? And especially kind of having the same values or beliefs as you, I find is extremely helpful. That way, they know what you stand for and they want to see you achieve that. And so, yeah.
No, I think, having that friend group that you can count on, like, as you get older, sometimes it's hard to make new friends, but we have this silly group of folks that get together called the Nude Crew, and it's because we eat noodles. We go out and eat ramen. We go to different ramen spots.
You guys got like merch?
We do. We got shirts and everything.
It actually comes in one color.
We got
you get one guess what color.
We got shirts and everything. It's a legit team of us that just destroy ramen restaurants every quarter or so.
So what's the top ranking ramen restaurant?
Probably Karai right now.
Karai's really good.
It's pretty good, but Scully's is pretty great too.
I've never had it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to put on my list.
Over at Cherry Pickwick, just off downtown. Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of good spots. That's the kind of one of the unknown things about Springfield. If you don't live here, there's a lot of great places to eat in this town for our size. So it's a lot of foodies like it here.
So your journey in therapy has been, you said, 4 to 5 years. So your wife now, would she say, like the Chris now, how different is he from the Chris 4 to 5 years ago?
I would say I'm not a ton different. There's not as many like highs and lows. So I take medication for for that. It's my don't punch people pill is what I call it. Not that I go around punching people before, but I don't feel like doing it, anymore. And so, sometimes you find out that you need a little help balancing those chemicals up there, and that helps kind of even things out. So I don't get so agitated or mad about things that really don't matter as much, and you can kind of let those slide and move on to the important things. And just maturing, being able to prioritize what matters helps a lot too. So I think she would say I'm doing better. Yeah,
that's good.
I hope.
That's good. So do you feel like in society or even in the corporate world, do you think that there is still a stigma when it comes to men's mental health? Like, women, they're emotional, so it's normal for them to go to therapy. But, it's like, well, you're different, you're random, you stick out if you're a guy doing that.
Yeah, I don't know about the corporate world. I feel like in the last few years, a lot has really changed in that area. I think a lot of maybe men my age or older still hold on to some maybe older kind of those older stereotypes of like guys don't do that type of thing. So I think it's more of a problem with their perception versus maybe like external pressures that are put on. I would say teens are kind of the most susceptible to like suicide from mental health issues, and so I think young men in that age group really are something that we need to focus on as a community, as a nation, to help provide them with everything. Kind of feels life and death when you're younger, and suicide seems like an option when it really doesn't need to be. Like I think back to some of the dumb stuff I did when I was a kid that was like, oh my gosh, my life is over. I cannot believe that I did that. I'll tell you a story offline, and I felt like oh my God, I can't go on after this. And now I look back on it, and not in public story I tell, but occasionally I'll tell it because it's kind of funny that I'm still here. But it's everything just seems so big at that age. So making sure that we're making it feel okay for, I think, guys, like, I don't know, I tried to be so tough when I was in high school. Like that was just
Yeah.
I don't know what I felt like I had to do, and I'm not tough at all. It's just,
and I mean, that's the thing is like holding all your emotion inside and feeling angry towards people or the world. Ooh, that makes you more of a man. You know what I'm saying? It from a woman's perspective, it's like, that's just so crazy. Like, just, talk about it and try to, So another question is, do you have any coping mechanisms that you would, recommend or suggest to, you said, high schoolers or younger people are like more susceptible, or just things you've kind of experienced that you're like, hey, this works for me?
Yeah, I mean, for me, gym is number one. Like, I have to get like that regular exercise and just helps me center. But also I found like, I call movies my yoga. Like, that's cool. Like I have to go to a movie theater. I try to go once a week, honestly. Nice. I know. I'm the
rewards member.
Yeah, I got that Alamo pass, right?
They're like, hey, give him the popcorn special. He's a regular.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of like my opportunity to check out. Like, I totally try to lose myself in that, and it just lets my mind reset and not worry about some things for 2 hours. So, I just find you got to find what works best for you. But what, I was kind of doing all that stuff, but I wasn't intentional about it until I started going to a therapist, and she helped me realize, those things are helping you. I can literally tell when you are doing these things and when you're not, right? And being able to talk to her about it and kind of realize it. But then also using like real therapy tools like EMDR and things like that were really helpful, and getting on medication and things like that can really help make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, having resources, having someone to talk to. I mean, you have to be intentional about it, just like you're saying with your health, right? Like, if I never went to the gym or did anything or ate crappy food, I would feel bad, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and so your brain's the same way. Like, you have to take care of it and be proactive about it. And if you're not, it can be pretty bad.
Yeah, I think you are a really good example because, you started this awesome company with your wife, and you're a father and a husband and all these things, and it shows that like you can be successful, you can have all the things too, but also mental health doesn't go away. That it's not a bad thing to go to therapy, and that it's honestly someone just bettering themselves. And when you're growing in a company, when you're an entrepreneur, I mean, isn't that what we're trying to do all the time, constantly? Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. Nice. And yeah. So as we're kind of closing the interview, just a few last questions. Little advice to our listeners and future entrepreneurs. So in the sense of mental health and being a business owner, what is something that you wish you could have told your younger self? So, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur and you're one of my listeners right now, like, ears open, because this is knowledge and this is wisdom,
I think if you live in Springfield, like, this is absolutely the city to take a shot at it. Like, you just have to take a shot. Like I was saying earlier, like, the biggest things I regret are the things I didn't try or didn't attempt, right? Because I was too scared I might fail. Like, you have to be somewhat realistic about it, and you have to prepare, right? Like I said, what did I say? Luck is preparation and opportunity, right? Like, you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for that opportunity to come along, but you have to be willing to seize that opportunity too, right? And so don't be too scared to try something, get out there and do it. And I think that is what inspires me about Springfield. There's so many young entrepreneurs here, like, keeps me on my toes. There's a new agency like every year in this town, right? And so, like, I got
the competitor market. I'm just kidding.
Right. So I just gotta stay on my toes. It keeps me going, but it also inspires me too, like, to see all the different, like, a lot of the developments that are happening in this area are, people under 40 are really moving and shaking in this town. The network is a great.
Callie freaking Carroll.
There we go. Yep. Our mutual friend Callie. Go vote April 4th.
April 4th.
I really want to see this town continue to develop too. There's a lot of people that are kind of anti-development here, and I get we need to be intentional about it, but I think we don't want to kill that entrepreneurial spirit, that development spirit of continuing to grow. Like, I'm not happy ever, honestly, where I'm at. Like, I always want to continue to get better. And I feel the same way about Springfield, right? Like, I want to, just because we grow doesn't mean we can't keep the things we love. It means we can just add to it. And I think sometimes people feel like it has to be one or the other, and it's not a zero-sum game. You can have both. More advice for young people. I don't know. Probably don't do anything dumb on social media. I didn't have to worry about
That's
that.
true.
I'm lucky.
That's true. Yeah, be careful what you post on TikTok. I mean, there's that. A lot of people are always like, yeah, TikTok can be a tool in the sense of, you have a good following, I was talking in some interviews, some athletes have said like colleges like it when certain people have big followings, or some companies really like that because you're adding that value to the company. But also, I mean, if you post a TikTok like 4 years ago, it was to a sound where you're like, forget you, or something to your ex, something real petty, and then, your boss is going to see that in 4 years. Just clean it out, like get rid of all the old, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so the biggest piece of advice would really just be going for it, right? Like put a plan together. Don't just like pull the trigger willy-nilly, but put a plan together, be intentional about it, but give it a shot. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I was, my kid's leveling up in a soccer program right now, and he was nervous about practicing with the new group of guys that are the next level up. And I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen, buddy? You're going to go back to being one of the best kids on the team you're on now if they don't take you.
Yeah.
So is that really that bad? No. Is that what you are right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what could happen? He was like, well, I could make the team. I was like, exactly. So worst case scenario, it's this, right?
Yeah.
And so you just got to go out there and try. And sometimes depression or mental health can really limit how you view yourself and what the possibilities are and what you can be. And you just have to tell that part of your brain to shut up for a minute and go do it, and then you'll figure it out once you get there.
Have you ever experienced like imposter syndrome or anything, or people, they're like, how am I CEO of this company? Like, am I not good enough today? Have you ever experienced something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the agency world every day. We have to come up, it's not like a formula where I go in there and come up with a creative concept. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did they trust me to do this? Like, how am I going to figure this out? And so
I feel the same way too sometimes. Like, we had that manufacturing conference and I got to speak, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, they really think I can speak. And then all of a sudden, all the words coming out, like all the AI stuff, and I'm sitting here like, there's no way I should be. Like, I don't really, right now, but you learn.
But now the next time, you're going to feel even more confident.
AI is this,
right? I mean, you got to get those reps under your belt. I kind of maybe I make too many sports analogies, but I think about it in that sense, right? Like the very first time I ever played basketball, I was horrible at it, and I only got mediocre, but I got better than I was, right? Because I took the time to practice and get better, and so there are some people that are naturals too. They'll get up and stand up and like, oh my gosh, how'd they do that? And that can make you go, well, I could never be that good. Maybe you can't, but you could get probably close if you work really hard at it. And if that's important to what you need to do to be successful, then you just got to put in the time and the reps to get there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What is your advice to a young entrepreneur or business, man or woman who's starting out, kind of from the mental health side? Like, is there anything you would have done differently when you first started the business, mental health wise?
Yeah, I was really, really bad about time management then. Like, I was cool with 70 hours a week. Like, that kind of like hustle culture, that was like, all I was about. My wife would be so mad. Like, you came home with 2 again. You came home with, 3 again. Yeah. But I was just so driven to make it work that I don't know. I think I probably spent a lot of like low quality time, just spending more time. Like, it'd probably been better to call it quits at 11 or 10 or whenever. Yeah. And get a good night's rest and come back and be refreshed and be more focused and better, more intentional about my usage of time. And so I've gotten better at that. And it took me a lot of trial and error to figure out how that works for me. But that would be like my big advice is like, it doesn't necessarily have to be all the hours, and the more hours doesn't equate to more success.
That's good.
It can be pretty detrimental, honestly. You can get too hyper focused on it and you can go, have a nervous breakdown or whatever. Like, you can just make it too much of your world. So you need to take that time to de-stress and relax and take a break. So being intentional about that, I think, what those breaks are and what they look like can be hard to do when you have a serious goal and you're passionate about it. But that's what I would probably tell my younger self is like, you don't have to be here till 3 a.m. every night. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So last question before I do my usual thing, what do you see for Revel in the next 5 years? Yeah.
If you can share, because
Yeah.
I know we got some competitors out here. Like, I'm about to be one. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, we're pretty happy with where we are. Like, we've always been continuing to grow, but we don't really, like, it's not about just getting bigger. It's about being able to offer better and more valuable services to the clients that we work with. So we're always looking for great talent to add to the team, if it makes sense. But we're really focused a little bit more on being a little more profitable versus just growth, right? Like, how can we maximize the time that we spend with the clients that we have, make sure we have the right clients and we're the right fit for them. So being a little bit more intentional about some of the areas that we work in, which hopefully will lead to some growth. You know, obviously, you know, we're a team of 10, so we have some room to grow amongst our team. But another cool thing about Springfield is there's so much talent that you can outsource to. So, you know, we work with probably, gosh, if I count them up, I bet there's 50 people that will freelance to on any given year over the year.
Just to help with clients?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's a copywriter focused in a certain area or a videographer or a gaffer or an illustrator or an animator or whatever it is. And, you know, 99% of them are all local.
That's pretty awesome. That's Springfield investing in Springfield.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we have a huge creative community. Springfield Creatives is a great organization here that really helps foster those relationships and build that community. And again, that's one of the reasons why it's actually pretty accessible to be an entrepreneur in that industry here, because while we're competitors, we're, for the most part, pretty collaborative competitors. You know, I meet with other agency owners on a regular basis that, you know, we have conversations about the growth of our company and what we're doing that's working and not. And yeah,
that's great. That's awesome. So as we end every episode, favorite song, favorite quote, and what do you want your legacy to be?
I'll start with quote because I think I said it earlier.
I know, you did say it earlier.
I'll stick with the luck quote, so we'll knock that one.
Yeah, he's like, you have to go back and like listen to it again. I'm not going to say it again.
Yeah, I'll mess it up now if I'm trying to think it. Song, that was tough. You told me that earlier.
I mean, it could just be like your favorite one right now if you doesn't be like an all-time thing.
So like my favorite artist is Jay-Z. So
okay,
I love a lot of Jay-Z songs.
I would not guess that. Okay.
But old Kanye.
Okay, Chris. I messed with some old Kanye.
Yeah, so my Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is my favorite album. I can listen to that nonstop all the way through. It's probably the only album that I will literally just listen all the way through on. So maybe there's a favorite song in there. It's definitely favorite album.
Yeah.
If I had to pick favorite song, I wanted to be Will Smith when I grew up when I was a kid. So Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song is probably my favorite song. But I will tell you one other song, okay?
Well, so he didn't have enough quotes, but he's got a lot of songs. He's got the playlist ready.
Got a lot of songs. So my dad, when I lived in Rolla for a little bit of time, he would drive and come get me, and we'd drive like 2 hours back to his house and stuff. So, and that was like every weekend when my parents were divorced. And he loved the group Alabama, the country group, and Dixieland Delight was like his favorite song.
Oh my gosh, great song.
And he was a pretty good singer. I'm a horrible singer. I'm really, really bad. But he would play that and sing it all the time. So it was just like a sentimental song.
Yeah.
But I used to sing that to my son Jackson to help him go to bed, even though I'm a really bad singer. I don't know how he went to sleep. But now it's like he knows all the words to it, and it's actually his ringtone, which is hilarious.
That's awesome.
That's his ringtone on his phone.
Awesome.
So when I call him, it plays, and so
it's kind of like sentimental.
Yeah. Heartstrings get pulled pretty hard when I hear that song still. So yeah, that one's pretty good too. It's a favorite in that category.
That's good. That's good. Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would love people to say that guy was a great dad. Like, I mean, it just like biggest fear but biggest joy. Like, I'd never want to be a bad dad ever, but I love being a dad. Like, nothing makes me more like excited or happy than just being a good dad. So yeah.
Well, what's a little piece of advice? Just, like being a dad, what do you, as a dad, what do you think, not like what your kid values most, but like what makes him smile the most, or what have you noticed?
I mean, I guess just kind of being there for him, like just making the time, which I haven't always been good at, but I'm getting much better at, like just going and sitting at his soccer practice and going to all his games and talking to him and know that he can talk to me, and having a good, healthy relationship with your spouse so that they know what that can look like for them one day. and showing them how to be a good man through actions, not by just telling them.
That's good. That's good.
So, I don't know. I'm not anywhere near perfect. Don't get me wrong. But like when I know I did good, like nothing feels better. And so I think it's probably different for everyone. My parents, I always looked at like, this might sound bad, but it's like, that's what I don't want to be. Like they were my,
in some aspects, that's so true.
Right. Like, that was I don't want to be like that. But one thing that, my dad wasn't always there physically, but like I could call him anytime. He didn't always have like money to help, or we weren't financially well off or anything like that. But I could always know I could call him and talk. And when I lived in Florida, I only got to see him like twice a year.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very much, but he called me every Saturday without fail.
Your dad did?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
That consistency thing I think is important for kids. I saw that when we were raising my brother. Just adding consistency back to his life, he started to thrive, right? Setting some goals, kids will live up to those expectations that you set for them, and if you don't set any expectations, they won't have any, and they won't live up to them. So bringing that consistency to it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being on the podcast. If you guys check out Revel Advertising, this place is freaking great. And yeah, just keep on keeping up with cash. Hopefully we have a new merch line coming out soon, but good things take time, and it's probably going to take a while, so don't get your hopes up. All right, love you guys. Bye.